Okay. Can you hear me, Adele? Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our next series of webinars. And this evening, it is my great pleasure to welcome Adelle Raemer of Kibbutz Nirim, who will tell us her story and her experience on that fateful and infamous day, namely the 7th of October. So, Adele, if you'd like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your story, your aliyah, and your move to Israel.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me, for having me on your webinar. I was born in the
Our
States.
pleasure.
I was in a Jewish Zionist youth movement, Young Judea. And after I finished high school, we went on a year program to Israel. That was in 1972-73. In 1973, August, I went back to the States to go to university like all good Jewish girls do. And then October 73, the Yom Kippur War broke out. And I said, well, what am I doing in the States? Israel needs me. And I made Aliyah. I came to live in Israel on a kibbutz just north of Eilat. I was immediately drafted, and it was through my army service that I arrived on Kibbutz Nirim, where I live today. I've lived there since 1975. Kibbutz Nirim is about a mile, 2 kilometers away from the border with the Gaza Strip. And we always call it 95% heaven because it's a wonderful, beautiful place to raise children, zero pollution, no crime, green. It's a desert that we've made bloom as per David Ben-Gurion's request. And it was indeed 95% heaven until October 7th, 2023, when it flipped and became 100% hell.
That's right. That's right. Just before we tackle that, it is, I think it's very important to point out to our viewers that Nirim is one of the 11 points established in the Negev desert. Would you like to just give us a little bit of background to that?
I am very impressed, Marco.
The best is yet to come.
So in 1946, before Israel was declared a state in 1948, 1946, David Ben-Gurion wanted there to be a Jewish presence in the Negev desert because it was just before partition, and that he knew that when the British did the partition, that partition would be according to areas where Jews and Arabs lived, and thus it would be partitioned into Israel and Palestine. So the veteran members of my community went out on the eve after Yom Kippur, when the British were not expecting anything to happen, and went out into 11 different places, 11 different communities, set out in the middle of the night to put up 4 walls and a roof, because according to Turkish law at the time, which was still recognized, if you have 4 walls and a roof, that is a structure
that's right.
be taken down. So
Nirim
is one of those historic communities.
Indeed. Tell me, what influenced your decision to join a kibbutz? You made Aliyah. What motivated you to join a kibbutz?
So on the one hand, I'm an only child, and I grew up always wishing for a big family. And I grew up in New York, in the Bronx, and my dream was to open my door and to see green. And in many ways, kibbutz was the realization of those 2 dreams, of one being in a community that was very close and almost like family, and being able to live someplace where I opened up my door and saw green.
Indeed, it was very much a paradise. The kibbutz. I remember I too spent some time on the kibbutz, and I thoroughly enjoyed it many years ago when I was young and handsome. Now, of course, I'm only handsome. Um, tell me. The kibbutz has undergone many changes throughout the years, hasn't it? Now, has your kibbutz been privatized? Has it moved away from the socialist ethos?
It has, but you know, many people say, "Oh, you've been privatized. You're not really a kibbutz anymore." But I I see it as being a kibbutz or society in general is sort of
Right,
like a child. And if
right.
the child grows, if it doesn't develop, if it doesn't evolve, if it doesn't change, then there's something wrong with that child. So
Certainly,
kibbutz
certainly.
has developed and evolved and changed with pragmatism. And I'm told in the 1950s, when the first people on kibbutz started getting a radio in their apartment, they had very small apartments, just a bedroom and a bathroom and a little living room.
Right.
And the radio was in the community center where everybody would go and meet. And when the first members brought a radio to their house, there was a big upheaval saying, it's the end of kibbutz. Nobody's going to come to the community center anymore. How can you do this?
Right, right.
My days, even in my days in the late 70s, when color TV started and came to Israel, one family on my kibbutz got a color TV, and there was a community meeting
Right, right.
discussing this. And you know what the decision was? They had to turn off the color ability on the kibbutz so that it would only be black and white until everybody was able to get color TVs.
Right, right, right,
Thank
right.
God we've moved on.
We've moved on. We've moved on. Indeed. Good to hear. Good to hear. So we have this wonderful scenario, this sort of Garden of Eden that you lived in till that fateful day. Now, let me bring in Dr. Fogarollo because she's eager to ask some questions. I don't want to hog all the questions just yet. Dr. Fogarollo, would you like to ask some questions to Adele? We need the sound.
Yes, and okay. Good evening. Thank you very much, Adele. To be with us is a great joy. And I would like to ask one question, very important. Last August, we went with a group of Italian in Kibbutz Berry and the Nova Festival. And I discovered something special, the good and the fantastic relationship with the neighbors that in this kibbutz they used to have before the 7th of October. When I were traveling inside the kibbutz, a house, a very house was destroyed, very destroyed, and a big photo of one lady was in front of the house, indicated that this house was a part of this lady. And this lady was killed and the bird inside the house, but she used to help the neighbors from Gaza, the people that they were sick. They used to travel with them with her car and to travel with them, and they brought them to the hospital to help them, to take care of them, and to memorize the number and the name of the people. She used to put in the front of the frigidaire the list of the names. So every Sunday morning, she used to go to the hospital with these people. The same she used the 7th of October, was a Shabbat, and she used this to have this list of the many people that after Shabbat she needed to go to the hospital with them. But one of the people in the list, they killed her and they burned her in the house. How is it possible, this terrible situation? She opened the house. She used her money to help them. She used it to bring them to the hospital. And somebody that was in the list was the criminal that she killed. She was killed from them.
Yeah.
Tell us about your relation and your relationship with your neighbors
In Gaza. Okay, so
in Gaza.
Yeah. So obviously, what Edda wants to know is about your interactions with the people from Gaza, many of whom came to work on the kibbutz, and there was an apparent friendship, I assume.
Are you talking about Vivian Silver?
No, well, in the specific, I'm not sure who. Yeah.
Referring to Vivian Silver's house.
Yeah, possibly. No, what we're really interested in is the general relationship that obtained between those people who came in from Gaza, who worked in the kibbutz. You laughed, you joked together, ate, broke bread, this type of thing. This is what she wants to know, what we want to know.
On my kibbutz, we have not had Gazans working for the past 20 years.
Right, right.
A Gazan did work in my house when my house was being built in 1997.
Right.
Being built, and I remember as if it was yesterday, I went over to the man who was working in my kitchen, building the kitchen. And I said, it must be very hard for you because you have to get up early and go through security.
Right.
And he said, yes, it is. I have to get up very early and in order to get here at 7, but at least I can make a decent living and feed my children and clothe them. So I do not know about the story of the names on the refrigerator, if it was indeed one of those people who came and killed whoever it was in Beirut.
I don't think we have to focus on that one person.
I am aware the program Road to Recovery is called.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I accompanied a friend of mine who Nirim, and who lost his brother to the conflict.
Yeah.
When he drove over a landmine on a tractor in the early 70s.
Yeah.
And he would drive people, volunteer his time, get into the car, drive over to the border and drive Gazans to the hospitals in Israel.
Right. Right.
I myself had contact with people from the Gaza Youth Committee before the 7th of October, and we would do collaborations together.
Right.
In 2019, we did a marathon with young people on our side of the border and on the other side of the border.
Right, right.
On bicycles in a marathon along the border on the same day, wearing T-shirts that said "Freedom, Peace." In the middle of this marathon, we stopped and we had a Skype call with the organizers of this, and everybody was so excited and so elated that this was happening, and we were talking to each other, and they were teaching their children.
Right.
We're not the enemy, that they don't have to hate the people on the other side of that border.
Right, right. So it's fair to assume that you considered these people friends. You consider them friends. There was
when this marathon finished, they were the organizers of this marathon on the Gazan side were hunted down and treated as traitors and thrown into jail.
Right, right, right.
Tortured and jailed for months.
Right, right.
We built bridges with Gazans.
Right, right.
On October 7th, we discovered that these bridges were made not of iron and steel, but of rope. And they unraveled.
They were very tenuous. And why do you think that was? Were they too few in number, the people that wished to?
always used to take people for years. I've taken hundreds of groups on tours of my kibbutz, and I'll always end up with them on the western fence in next to the houses that were now burnt, where people were murdered on the western side of the kibbutz. And I would tell the visitors, I am sure that the people on the other side of that border just want the same thing that I do. The majority of the people, food on their table and good health and good lives for their children. Unfortunately, October 7th taught me that I got my numbers wrong.
Right.
The great majority of the people, because the Hamas have been doing such an excellent, thorough job of educating generations of children to hate us.
Right. So the reality was that these initiatives were really, they only involved a minority of the citizens of Gaza, and that it's fair to assume that the majority had been brainwashed to hate Israel, and the penny dropped on the 7th of October. Is this a fair description?
Tragically, yes. And the people who did believe differently were murdered or jailed, or they managed to run away.
Right.
And today people dare not speak out against the Hamas.
Right.
If anything is to change there has to be a profound change in education.
Right. But isn't that something that in reality has never happened either in the areas under Hamas control or the Palestinian Authority? Because we see regularly what the Palestinian Authority transmits on its programs. This isn't material that tends towards peace. It portrays stereotypes of Jews, and they say quite openly that they want the elimination of the Jews and the Jewish state.
It's in their charter.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, tragically, the only way that's not gonna happen on its own. The only way that's gonna happen is from the outside. That certainly isn't something that Israel can do. That's something that moderate Arabs or European countries that are willing to step in. I mean, it happened, re-education happened in Japan, it happened in Germany after World War.
It did, but I think the analysis of the Europeans, or they've been closing a blind eye to the reality that indeed you have an authority that has a genocidal intent. When the policy of denazification was carried out, Germany lost land in the east, and the country was totally shaken up. There was a policy of denazification. The country, democracy was imposed on it. And
by whom?
By the Allies. The Allies imposed, certainly in Western Germany. In Eastern Germany, it was another story, okay? But with regard to West Germany, the policy underwent the country underwent a policy of forced denazification, and they had to forego land in the east. So they lost huge swathes of territory. I'd like to come back to your experience. I'd like to go back to October the 7th now, okay? Tell us where you were and give us a little bit of the background on that fateful day. What was happening when you heard about what was happening and how things developed or degenerated?
So October 6th was my kibbutz's 77th anniversary. And of the 11 points that we discussed at the beginning. And we had a wonderful celebration, and many people slept over. We had free music and food and bouncy castles, and it was truly very joyful. And Among the visitors was one of my sons who slept over. And before I went to bed, I told him, if you don't see me in the morning, don't worry. I want to get up before sunrise, camera, get into my car and go out and take a picture of wild squills, a wildflower that that time. So thankfully I was too tired on October 7th to actually do that, because I hadn't have been sitting here talking to you today a year.
Right.
6:29 on October 7th, a year and a day ago, the incoming rocket alarm started blaring. Now we are, as I said, 2 kilometers away from the border. That allows us 0 to 10 seconds between the second you hear that alarm to the second you hear the explosion, 0 to 10 seconds to get to someplace safe. So I ran to my safe room, which is also my guest room, which is where my son was staying.
Right.
And we realized that this was something different. It was such a heavy barrage that it went north of Tel Aviv to south of us. And on TV in Israel, when there's a barrage, when there are barrages, you have these pop-ups that show up on the side of the screen. And each pop-up gives the name of the community or the city or the neighborhood that's being targeted by these rockets. So we could see how far and wide these rockets were reaching. Only realized later was that the rockets were camouflage for the main event that was going around in over 120 spots along the border.
Right. It was diversionary fire.
It was diversionary fire, and thousands of bloodthirsty terrorists were invading Israel.
Right.
At the same time as they were invading Israel and invading our communities, they were invading the army outposts and army camps that were along the border. At one point, we get the only official information I'm getting is on an internal messaging system on my WhatsApp, on my phone, saying Israel has been invaded. Go outside your safe room, lock your doors and your window, and then go back inside your safe room and lock yourselves in. So a safe room, first of all, is just a little bedroom with reinforced concrete walls and ceiling, and a special door that you pull closed and click, and a special window with a heavy iron sleeve. So they told us, go back into your safe room and lock your doors, but safe room doors don't lock.
That's right. That's right.
When I got my safe room, I asked my head of security, how do I lock it in case there's an infiltration? He said, you can't, it's illegal. Because
that's right.
If you have a medical emergency and you're locked inside there, the medical corps won't be able to get in and save you. So the only way to keep this door locked is by pulling down on that handle.
Yeah.
Kept these iron prongs in the wall.
Right.
And hoping and praying that whoever's on the other side of that door isn't stronger than you are.
Yes.
So we were inside the safe room. We turned off the electricity. It was hot, but we turned off the air conditioner so that the motor outside wouldn't betray the fact that we're inside. And we just sat there and waited. And all of a sudden we start seeing messages on the internal messaging system saying, we hear shooting outside.
Yeah.
We hear Arabic outside our windows.
Right.
People entering our homes and breaking things. They're trying to enter the safe room. We're holding on to the handle to try and keep it closed. Yeah. Where's the IDF? Where are the police? Where are the firefighters? Where are the people that are supposed to be coming to save us?
Right.
And people are saying they're setting our houses on fire. And we start smelling through the vents. We start smelling the smoke of the fires. And all of a sudden, my son and I also started hearing the shooting and started hearing Arabic. And my son understands a little bit Arabic. And he said, somebody's being called away in Arabic. And we didn't know what that was, but I looked at my son and he looked at me. We told each other that we loved each other and basically said goodbye. And at the same time, as I'm watching all of these messages, I'm following the virtual progression as they're getting closer and closer to where my son-in-law is with my 3 grandchildren. I have 3 granddaughters that lived on Nirim, age 2, 6, and 8, Zivraz and Yuval. And closer and closer to where my daughter is. They're separated. In her safe room, on the floor, under her bed, hiding under her bed. You know, when I was a kid, I used to watch a program called Hogan's Heroes. It was a parody of Nazi Germany and Americans.
Yeah.
And I used to play as a child, where would I hide if the Nazis came to get me? Hide in the closet, under the bed. Little did I ever dream that I would find myself in 2023 in my own home, my own kibbutz, in my own land, hiding from the Nazis of 2023, but that's what we were doing.
Indeed.
So after a while, I had to go to the bathroom. So I opened up the safe room as quietly as I could in case there were any terrorists in the house. And I saw that the sounds that we had heard were apparently the terrorists trying to get into our door. When they couldn't manage to open the door, they started breaking the slats on the window, breaking through the window. And then they were called away. So I don't know why or what, but they moved on.
Right.
Unbeknownst to me, at the same time, approximately, that my house was being infiltrated, there were about 80 terrorists at this time on the kibbutz. We're a small kibbutz. We're 430 people in the entire kibbutz. Terrorists were entering my son-in-law's house. Now, my son-in-law was armed. He was one of the first responders. Thank God. He told my grandchildren, hide under the blankets. Don't make any noise. You can hear a loud noise, but don't come out from under the blankets no matter what. I'm here. He lifted his gun, waited until he saw the handle of the safe room starting to move. He kicked open the door and shot the terrorist right in front of his safe room door. He saw the 2 terrorists in his house. He started to go after them, but he realized that there were many highly armed terrorists outside.
Yes.
So he cut his losses, went back into the safe room, got down on one knee, lifted his gun, and waited. The next person to come through that door was going to get a bullet.
Right.
The army did not arrive. The first serious number of boots on the ground did not arrive to my kibbutz until 1:30 in the afternoon, 7 hours after this nightmare began. And so when they arrived, we were told that they had arrived, but we didn't know where they were.
Yeah.
What had happened was they arrived, they contacted the first responders who were active, and there were only 4 of the first responders from our community who were able to be outside and active that morning, but they fought bravely. And when the army came, they went to the western neighborhood where the houses were on fire, and there was a 10-day-old baby in a house that was burning, and the smoke was streaming into the safe room, and his parents were begging for help. So the soldiers went, first of all, to that house to extract the 10-day-old baby Kai and Amy and Uriel from their house. And then they went house by house, saving who they could and evacuating them to a central area in the kibbutz so that they could protect them and encircle the community center and keep them safe. And by the time they got, it took until 5:15 in the afternoon for them to get to my house. So
Right.
the safe room, fearing for our lives, my son pulling down on the handle.
Yeah.
7 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
They evacuated us under fire. We walked through the kibbutz to get to the safe center. There were bodies on the ground. There was still shooting. In the middle of this exodus, there was incoming rocket fire. We had to throw ourselves down on the ground and cover our heads. We waited till we heard the explosion and then got up and continued. We were eventually evacuated only the following day because the entire region was still full of active terrorists.
That's right. That's right. I remember the reports coming through. It took quite a number of days for them to mop up the terrorists.
Yes,
indeed.
So they evacuated us through an active war zone. There were still incoming rockets, and we passed on the roads charred bodies and burning vehicles, and we just drove, and it was petrifying.
Indeed, indeed. What was the situation on the other kibbutzim? Was it an analogous situation, or would you say even worse? Because we hear testimonies, and people are still incredulous and trying to deny the facts about babies being burnt in ovens and the most lurid mutilations that took place. Of course, you can confirm this because it's very important for our viewers to hear from an ocular witness about all these things. You can confirm these atrocities because it's very important for our viewers to be able to avail themselves of your testimony.
You know, I've been abroad 5 times since October 7th. And each time I would tell people on October 7th, I lost more people than I can even count. More people that I know personally. I was a teacher in our regional high school for almost 4 decades. Former students, parents of former students, colleagues, people in my yoga class. So somebody on one of these trips said, try to count. So I made a list. I don't know if you can see this.
Yes, indeed. It's
Each one of these are names of people I knew personally who were murdered or kidnapped.
And this is so important that we conserve this, because as usual, we will have the deniers. Just as we have Holocaust deniers, we're going to have people denying the 7th of October as well. I hear it all the time.
You would have thought that the fact that these monsters came equipped with GoPro cameras and filmed their atrocities so proudly and shared it with the world. Of course, very quickly, they took it down from Telegram, but they're still out there. And there's the, what is it, a 47-minute, 45-minute film of atrocities.
Indeed.
Lists that we as Jews who honor life do not want to show these pictures of people who are close to us being murdered and mutilated.
Yeah.
But it could be that the world really needs to see these.
Sometimes I ask myself, does the world really want to see it? Because it seems as if they deliberately blinker themselves. Sometimes one has to ask the question, is the world very often, and many foreign governments, are they in good faith? And my answer to that is in the negative. So, when I hear some of the criticism of Israel.
Not only do they not want to see it, but they also say, oh, it's just AI.
Yes, yeah. They can latch onto that as well, though, of course.
I can assure you, from my community alone, 5 people were murdered, including 3 soldiers who we did not know about, who came to our community before 7 in the morning and were murdered. They were decapitated. The terrorists there's a radio recording. Should I not get graphic?
You can get graphic. People need to know. This is a very important testament.
That was shared on one of the early interviews that I did with the BBC of one of the terrorists bragging to his commander on the phone in Gaza saying, we killed the soldiers, we're playing football with their heads.
Yeah, yeah.
This same soldier's head, he was the commander of the Southern Brigade, Asaf Hamami, his head was discovered in a Gaza market being sold.
That's right. That's right. That's right. People don't really understand the depravity of, I wouldn't even call them people we're dealing with, these monsters. Now, I think we have to examine, I think your testimony is invaluable. I think we need to be getting this across, and people have to face the music. People who have actually supported and aided and abetted these people in the foreign liberal press for many years. It's very important that we stick it in their faces, as it were. My question is, would it be fair to say that, and especially among the kibbutzim in the south, that there was a misconception about the neighborhood we were living in? And that at the end of the day, reality trumped that make-believe world that people wanted to believe in.
So, but before I address that, I just want to say one thing. In the Western world, there's, in the past 10 years, there's the whole Me Too movement. Women say, I was raped.
Indeed.
Raped. So how can these same liberals turn around when we say that our people were raped, men and women, murdered, decapitated, babies were burnt? How can they turn around and say, prove it?
That's right. That's right.
Double standard for Jews that just doesn't make sense. I grew up in America where we were taught to cherish our minorities.
Of course.
Cultural diversity. What happened to that education? What happened to those people?
Indeed, when it comes to Jews, they have short-circuited. Everything goes haywire.
So to answer your question, there were a number of misconceptions that not only we on the border had, also the heads of our government had, including Prime Minister Netanyahu. If you give them money, if you let the Qatari money in, the Gazans will be happy and not want to rise up and come over and murder us. Misconceptions went from grassroots, and it's ironic because you have two different sides of the political spectrum. Prime Minister Netanyahu cannot be considered a lefty.
No, he certainly can't. Let me just say one thing in his favor. He did inherit this conception, though. I think, truth be told, we have to look at Oslo and perhaps even go back even further, Camp David, the first peace agreement with Egypt, because we must bear a little emphasis placed on the fact that arms come through the border with Egypt to Hamas. They have indeed aided and abetted this. So I think while the focus is on Iran, I think we must be very wary of Egypt, who has allowed these tunnels, these two-lane tunnels, to be dug from their side of the border into Gaza. And I think this is worthy of greater scrutiny. We have a villain who's being tried, who people try to portray as a peace partner. I believe that Camp David indeed may have been one of the original sins. I think Oslo went a step further in the sense that it we've had Oslo for many years, and basically we've known what's been going on in the Palestinian educational system. It's there in the public domain, and people have chosen not to see it.
But how long has Prime Minister Netanyahu been Prime Minister?
Wow. He has been Prime Minister a long time. But let me just say this. I think people were drugged on Oslo. They weren't prepared to come off it. This is the thing. This is a very difficult situation.
The world is still drugged on misconceptions.
Yes, indeed, indeed. I agree with you. Yes,
the Western world, it has to learn that it cannot look at the Middle East through the prism of Western glasses.
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. I have been saying this for many years, but obviously people like me would have been shouted down a year ago. Okay, most people would have said it's all right, nothing's happened, they're quiet over there. Hamas are keeping things quiet. But I think, unfortunately, it's only through this tragedy that we've realized the extent of evil that issues from these areas which have been conceded to the Palestinian Authority and Hamas.
Who realizes this?
No, I think within Israel. I think Israel, there's been a change. I mean, there's no left and right anymore with regard to our neighbors. I think 90% of people realize that there's very little to talk about with a monster, and it is very foolish to place one's security in the hands of these monsters.
In Israel?
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Western world has not caught up, and if they don't catch up quickly.
Indeed. Let me just say this. You raise a very interesting point, because I've said for a long time, I've said that Palestinism, which hasn't been embraced in the Western world, is the retrovirus that's weakening the immune system of Western societies, because there's a confluence of all the worst elements around this cause, this phony cause, and it's undermining the fabric of European society.
Yeah. So what are you going to do about it?
So what are we going to do about it? It's you and I.
I'm here.
You and I. So tell me, let's get back to the kibbutz now, because the kibbutz, I have very fond memories of my time in the kibbutz. I was a volunteer many years ago and an ulpanist. What is life like now in the kibbutz? How is it? Is there a semblance of normality?
No.
We
cannot. I'm talking to you from Beersheba, not from my kibbutz.
Oh, I see. We
cannot go back yet.
Right.
I was there yesterday for the ceremony, and it was
of course.
It was the first time, it was on October 6th, we had 2023, as I said, celebrated our 77th anniversary. There were hundreds of people there. This year, on October 6th, I went back because my cousin asked me to come with his daughter, because she had not been in the South yet, and it was a ghost town. I go to Nirim almost every week.
Right.
Very quiet there. So on October 6th this year, I was there, and there was nobody. 7th, yesterday, it was full of people.
Right.
And all of a sudden, it reminded me. It was like home again.
Of course.
It can never be the same again.
That's right.
Said 5 people were murdered, and we had 5 people kidnapped.
Right.
Kidnapped people. 3 of them were released, but the 2 that were left in Gaza were murdered. We can never be the same again. We can never go back. Kibbutz Nirim of October 6, 2020.
Right. It's a different world. Now we're in the world.
Yesterday gave me hope and showed me a window to the future, to what it will be like when there are people again on Nirim, be able to go back. And that's why I was just in the States for 27 days, going coast to coast, talking to people, telling them our stories, in order to raise money for our kibbutz so that we could
Right. We
have to rebuild bigger and better and safer and stronger than ever before in order to convince the families to come back.
Right.
And as of now, we're not allowed to go back yet. It's a military zone, but already working. We've taken down the 30 houses that were destroyed by fire. We've taken them down already. And next week or the week after, they're supposed to be starting with the reconstruction of building the infrastructure for sewers and water and electricity. And we're going to be bringing prefab homes there. And we're going to go back.
Indeed.
My victory.
Of course.
That will be my personal revenge, to go back home and to live well.
It's so good to hear that there's this resolve to rebuild a great community and make it bigger, stronger, and better.
Unfortunately, tragically, there are communities that are not talking that way. And I'm talking about Kibbutz Nirim, a mile, 2 kilometers away from mine, suffered so much tragedy.
Yeah.
They lost 1 out of every 4. 1 out of every 4 souls that were on that kibbutz that day were kidnapped. There were 4 houses in the entire kibbutz that were not entered. Most of their buildings will have to be destroyed, and it will have to be totally be rebuilt. And I am not hearing this talk from the members of their community, because so many of their people were slaughtered. They can't even talk about going back. And the daughter of one of my very dear friends, Judy, whose name I have on the back of my dog tag, Judy and her husband, Gadi, were walking out on their sunrise walk. They weren't too tired to get up at 5:45 in the morning on the 7th. And they went on their walk. They were both murdered in the fields outside their kibbutz. Their bodies were kidnapped and taken back to Gaza. Their bodies are still in Gaza. I put their names here in hopes that I'd be able to give it back to them when they come back.
Indeed. We owe it to them. We owe it to them to rebuild and come out stronger. Indeed. Let me just ask Dr. Fogarollo whether she has any questions, any further questions.
Thank you. I am speechless. I don't have a word about what happened. Every time that you can speak, do you hear me? Yes. Every time that we speak about the tragedy of the 7th October, more think, we know more think, because it was so dramatic. I am speechless, but I need to know, as a Western citizen, I live in Italy and I am in a European country. They don't understand in European country the tragedy, the situation of Israel. What, Adele, what can you advise to us to do for you, to do for Israeli people in these dramatic times? Because I was in Israel for months, many months. I came in Israel in March and I lived in Israel till the end of August. But it was my 46th travel to Israel. And it was my first time that I didn't see Israel people to smile. Because in every situation, Israel people is smiling, is happy, is so wonderful. But I was so sad to see in every shop, in every place, in every square, in the north of Israel, I was in Haifa, the face of the hostage killed or still in Gaza, and the people every time they were looking at this face, and their face of the Israeli people were very sad. what it can do in these European countries, in this Western world, that they don't understand very well the tragedy, this dramatic situation. Please help us to understand and to share to our people. We are Christian for Israel, a Christian organization, and we are working in all the nation, Italy, European country, in the state, to share the true message. Please help us. What you can do?
So there are a number of things that you could do. We need your support. We need you to get educated. We need the people of the West to get educated like you're doing in this program, sharing the realities of what happened to us. We need you to stand up against the pro-Palestinian protests. I have no problem with Palestinians that want to live here in peace, but these protests are blatantly calling for the genocide of my people, of my family, of me. And we need the West to push back on this, because the more the West does not push back, that emboldens the terrorists, that emboldens the Hamas, that emboldens the radical Islamic bodies in the different countries in the Middle East. And we need your help. We need your support. We need you to educate your youth so that they understand that we are not the enemy. We are not the ones that are starting this. Israel will make peace with anyone who's willing to make peace with Israel. We've made peace with Egypt. We've made peace with Jordan. We've made peace with
Jordan also.
Accords. We will do it. As we were discussing before, the peace with Egypt isn't so great, but there's no shooting, there's no fighting there, and that was before. So we need your support. We need the world to stand up against radical Islam. And it's for your good, as well as for ours, because the battle that we're fighting against the Hamas and the Hezbollah and the Iranians, this is the battle of the Western world. And look at us, we're so small. We're so tiny. We can't do this alone.
Your testimony is very, very important, because European people are blind. They trust in talking, in a relationship, in a friend, but they don't know that these are our enemy. Now are the enemy of Israel, but later they will be the enemy of European countries. You are fighting the battle for us. It's true. You are fighting it, and you need to be with all the Israeli people.
And we need the world to demand that the hostages be brought home, be released. 368 days. I change this number on my shirt every day. That's the number of days that our people have been hostage, innocent Israelis and nationals, of ages, babies and Holocaust survivors and everything in between, stolen from their beds, barefooted, kidnapped from a music festival, illegally kept in Gaza. 101 people, dead and alive, are still being held in Gaza. I am so angry with the world for standing up on October 8th, 2023, and saying, stop, you have to let those people go. How many lives on both sides of the border could have been saved if the world had done that on October 8th, 2023? It's not too late. It can still be done. And this war would be over in a day.
Yes. Do you know, I received the information that another officer was killed. Now they are 100. Do you know, Mark?
No, I haven't heard this information just yet.
Now,
No.
now a friend from the Jewish community, Elio, he wrote a message. One was found killed, one hostage.
Yeah.
So they are 100. That is so terrible to hear this. I'm
Indeed.
so sorry. I'm so sorry.
You're saying that another hostage was announced as not being live, but having been
Yes.
As already dead, yes.
One. Yesterday in Rome, we used the 100 and the one yellow ball for every hostage. Now, one hostage was killed. They found killed. It's a terrible situation.
Indeed, indeed. But we shall overcome. We shall overcome as we've always done, and our enemies will know about it.
Like I like to say, Am Israel Chai, whether
Am Israel Chai.
Am Israel Chai, indeed.
Am Israel Chai. Every people.
Am Israel Chai, whether they like it or not.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway, Adele, thank you so much for your wonderful testimony. It's very important for people to have first-hand testimony, because people will deny, just as they tried to deny the Holocaust. They're going to try and deny this, but we're not going to let them. We have plenty of evidence, and we're not going to stop. We're going to persevere and show people, and foreign governments and foreign press will not be able to avoid seeing these things. We're going to drive the message home.
We have no choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Adele, thank you so much. And when you come to Israel, you come to visit you. We would like to meet you in person, and we would like to help you. You stay in contact and you share the message each other, because I would like to help you with all our people. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Now you can have time for questions.
Are there any questions? I don't see any questions here. I don't see any questions.
Yes.
Oh, do you see any questions, Edda?
No, they wrote, thank you, Adele. Thank you very much. Blessing for Adele, for her situation. And another message, bring them home. Liberation for the hostage, stop to stay there. There is a good answer from the people that follow us in YouTube, because they are writing a good message. Another message is only to give love to Adele and all the Jewish people. Another message is from Sandro. Thank you. We are very close to your heart. Thank you so much. People that are giving thanks.
Thank you.
Another one, thank you, another one. Everybody is giving thanks to you, Adele, because your message is very touchful to the heart. And thank you. As a Christian, I will ask you that you can forgive all the anti-Semitism in the nation, because we need to be close to Israel, to be with Israel in all our life. And it's very important to remember Genesis 12, the word of Abraham. God said to Abraham, I will bless everybody that will bless Israel. And thank you, Adele. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark, very much.
Thank you very much, Edda. And thank you, Marco.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.